Welcome, one and all, to NVIDIA Week. Join us now to talk all things NVIDIA earnings, what Jensen Huang had to say about AI chip demand, and much more is Adam Levine. Adam is senior writer at Barron's. Adam, thanks for being here on what is undoubtedly always one of the most anticipated moments of the
Oh
earnings
yeah.
calendar. Top takeaways here from Jensen Huang, his leather jacket, and what we heard from NVIDIA.
The top takeaway was another monster quarter. And next quarter is going to be another monster quarter. And demand is insatiable for their equipment and for the stuff that runs on their equipment at the cloud that they sell to. And so demand's insatiable right now, and it's not going anywhere in the short term.
We had seen the stock under a little bit of pressure. I'm looking at the technicals now. The stock had actually traded underneath its 50-day moving average in anticipation of earnings, but a big gap down here the next day, currently up 4%. Is this more or less in line with how you expected the stock to perform? Given that we've had previous earnings where, by all accounts, the numbers were good, it just wasn't enough for investor appetite.
Yeah, they're kind of held to a different standard than everybody else. Like they don't have to it's not enough that they beat expectations. They have to beat a lot, and they have to give great guidance. And Jensen has to not talk about China too much. And all those things kind of came together this quarter. I was surprised it was so range bound in the last 3 months. I love this company, so I'm not going to be shy about saying that.
Do you think Nvidia did enough to ease any of the concerns on Wall Street that AI spending may have been outpacing demand? We've been talking a lot about that in recent weeks.
I think that's been overblown. I think the signals people are getting from, SoftBank and Peter Thiel and Michael Burry are not what they think they are. We can talk about that if you like. Um, and in the short term, this demand's not going anywhere. I've been taking this in 6 month chunks since 2023, and right now, full steam ahead next 6 months. But, I don't have a crystal ball about what happens next. And I think the biggest threat is macro, is a recession. So um, the demand isn't going anywhere though right now. It's insatiable.
So we'll revisit the macro potential headwinds in just a bit. But since you mentioned Peter Thiel, a lot was made of him exiting his positions. You talk about the more bearish bet that Michael Burry is kind of famously putting on the stock. What are we to make of those headlines? Given that we don't really know the whys, there could be a number of reasons as to why things like that are going on with Peter Thiel. But what's your take when you saw those headlines leading into earnings?
Well, the Peter Thiel thing, I don't, I looked into it. I don't know what this fund is. It's a very small fund. It had three stocks in it in June. One of them was Nvidia, a relatively small position. And then it had three stocks in September and no Nvidia. So I'm not sure what this fund is called. Teal Macro. It's very small. It was 200 million, and now it's like 75 million. So this is a change for Peter Thiel. So I didn't put much into that. Um, Michael Burry, I'm not convinced by the evidence that he's showing about around depreciation. And today it was about share-based compensation. And these are all things to have discussions about, but they're not reason to short the stock, in my view. And the SoftBank thing, SoftBank sold a bunch of Nvidia shares, but they needed to raise money to give to OpenAI. They're investing 22.5 billion in OpenAI in December. So they sold a bunch of telecom shares, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, and took out a margin loan on their ARM shares, as well as the Nvidia portion of it. So I didn't take those very seriously, but obviously they drove sentiment last week, the week before, and I think this kind of reminded everybody that the demand is very real, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. My biggest fear revolves around private equity, private credit, VCs, private companies. and we don't have great visibility on that like we do on public companies. So
When you talk private credit, are you talking the Blue Owls, the KKRs, the Apollo Globals of the world? And if so, can you talk to us a bit more about the concerns there? We're talking a lot more about circular financing, which I fear maybe Jensen Huang largely put to bed, but you're talking about a really interesting rise in importance for some of these companies that have not always been household names, but we're talking a lot more about them now.
um well, um according to Crunchbase, in 24 and so far in 25, VCs have funded AI startups about 280 billion. And that's a lot of money, and it goes straight into their cloud bills. Most of that is going right into paying Microsoft, paying Google, paying Amazon. And if that tap gets, if those private investors decide to turn off that tap, that's a big problem for those companies. And we just don't have a ton of visibility on it, except that right now everyone's lining up to invest in AI startups at very high valuations. And it's not, and unlike in 99 and 2000, when it was public companies that we could keep an eye on, right? We could see their financials quarter by quarter. There was this wave of IPOs. It's not about IPOs. It's not about public financing. It's about private financing now. And you're seeing a lot of private debt go into data center construction, and private equity and private and VCs into startups.
Hmm.
Nvidia invested 3.7 billion in the quarter in private in startup equity. So there's a lot flying around right now. And if that tap ever gets turned off, that's a problem. And we have and we have very little visibility into that. So,
Adam, what should we make or take away from the U.S. Saudi Investment Forum this week? Because we saw Jensen Huang there alongside the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He was there with President Trump. He was there with Elon Musk. You mentioned Jensen maybe downplaying China influence earlier in our conversation. What does the Saudi Arabia component mean, and does it stand out in any notable way this week in particular?
well, it's part of an overall trend that they're calling sovereign AI. And it's that countries, governments, especially the ones with public investment funds, um, they want to guarantee that they have AI capacity and that their startups can also get access to that, and that they can make models in their languages and culture that reflect their language and culture. Um, and so the big issue in the Middle East was getting licenses from the government. There's been some fears that some of the Gulf states are playing U.S. off of China in this regard, and there could be technology transfers to China via UAE or Saudi Arabia. I think not enough focuses on UAE versus Saudi Arabia, but they're both going to be huge customers. And it's not just them. There's other countries that are going to be big customer governments that are going to be big customers of Nvidia's. And so that's just another avenue of growth for them, you know?
Sure. Before I let you go, is Nvidia still positioned as top dog into 2026?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's I'm not allowed to own individual names I talk about, but if I was, I'd still own Nvidia. I'll tell you that.
All right. Adam Levine is a senior writer at Barron's, helping us make heads or tails of a very consequential week for Nvidia and the broader AI trade as well. Adam, we'll continue the conversation soon. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks for having me.